Hello, everyone. This is Lessa with the Pillow Talk Summit. I am here today with Dr. Ray Doctor, and he is self-described as a love and life ninja. I love that. And he says, "Hello, I will ninja you." He's a prosperity, passion, and happiness coach, as he says. I love that too. Hi, Dr. Ray. Thanks so much for being with me today on the phone.
Good. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm
We're
super
having fun.
excited. Say again?
We're having fun already in our conversation.
Yeah, as ninjas, yes.
Yes.
All right, so today we're going to talk about the art of sexual healing and communication. I love that. And apparently I love everything today. It's great. I keep saying that. So initially, I just want to say, like, the questions that I had for most of my experts were, why don't people talk about sex? Why would it be awesome if they did? And what tools can we bring around that? So if you just have anything to say briefly on those topics, then we'll get into the questions that you that I really want to ask you.
Well, I feel as though the questions and just kind of the direction I have as far as why people don't talk about that, a lot of that stems from sexual trauma. A lot of it stems from a person's culture, many things. So it could be a taboo topic. And secondly, more and often couples have a tendency to talk about it in the moment when they're pissed off.
Yeah,
It's not,
definitely.
most people try to push things underneath the rug. So if they're having a nice dinner, everything's going great. It's not like a woman is going to feel comfortable with saying, by the way, when we get home, can we slowly do this and do it that way? Because it could be, he feels like he's being bossed around or it's not good enough. People need to learn to have better communication skills and take those chances and have those conversations outside of the bedroom.
Yeah.
Outside of the bedroom. When you first you start dating someone, it depends on how sexual it gets. People can even talk about, hey, have you ever had anal sex? No, I
Sure.
never have tried that. Or it's somehow there's like no pressure and you just ask any question.
Right.
People become, they're in a relationship for a while, they're married, they're like, I don't want to touch that area. I ask that question because now we're married. It's like,
Literally or figuratively, they don't want to touch that area. Maybe.
exactly.
Right.
Someone take a shower. Okay.
Yeah. 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 So getting into your questions, then, what truly creates that kind of conversation or even that foreplay outside the bedroom?
I think, like, especially men really need to hear this, and that is foreplay for women, from what I understand, really starts in the head, and then it moves into the heart, then it moves into the rest of the body. And so text messaging is such a valuable tool. People don't realize it. Like,
I
for
completely
example,
agree.
a man could really score a lot of points by sending cute pictures of an animal or flowers and saying, I'm thinking of you. That can warm her heart up before they come home from work or whatever. Even when she's at home, if they have kids, it's not like she's thinking about, oh, I can't wait to have sex.
Yeah.
She's like taking care of kids, she's
Just
wiping
think
out
about the
food.
dishes. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. She probably didn't shave her legs,
No.
whatever it is. But if he is talking to her like as if she is his sweetheart, that really puts her in a mood. She starts feeling like, I'm excited to see him. This is why we're married. This is why we had kids together. This is why we're creating space together. So the communication has to be playful. It has to be passionate, whether or not you're having sex with this person. I mean, it creates polarity. Couples who've been married for a long time, while they might not have genital sex, they still are having sexual exchanges by being sarcastic with each other, by helping each other out, by holding hands, by sharing that space. And so it's interesting is that when we're younger, we take for granted all this energy that we have. And this energy that we have can be harnessed through words, through our intentions, through our hearts. And that is what creates that polarity. And what's really important for everyone, both men and women, is that a lot of the sexual attraction we have in the beginning it's just hormones. We think it's love. It's our bodies. It's how we've come to survive. If we didn't have that attraction, we wouldn't make babies. In other words, like the way that cavemen and cave women had babies, it was really about just genital sex. It wasn't about, oh, how can we expand? How can we
make love.
evolve?
Yeah.
we're going to die by the time we're 30.
Right. Right.
Okay? Think
Yeah.
about that. I mean, our lovemaking style, our connection has to go beyond the caveman and cavewoman. They keep their...
Yeah. We can't just drag them by the hair into the bedroom and bang away. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you're years old, it's not like you're looking at each other going, hey, this is exciting. Let's just have like hardcore sex, every night.
Right.
And the attraction can fade away. So you need to have that communication to create that experience of want to have that connection.
Yeah, definitely. And I've talked about connection in the bedroom with a couple of different experts. I'd love to hear your opinion on what that really means. What does that mean to be connected with somebody, with a partner?
I think it's when two people can look each other in the eyes. I feel as though when you don't have to sit there and use extreme sex words, like that's role play is fine, but think about that. If you're playing another role, where are you? So
Right.
I think often that people will try to spice up their sex life because they don't have that connection. See, when you have that really heartfelt connection where you're really able to see your partner's essence, you connect to his or her soul, what ends up happening is that it's really hard to go anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
when you're touching her body, when you're experiencing her, you kind of are inside of her, like energetically. So the moment if you think about anything else, what you're doing is you're creating a distraction or disturbance in the field, literally.
The force.
Yeah, before. And with women, this. If
Right.
you're about to reach an orgasm,
Mm-hmm.
if you sense him going too quickly or gets in this performance mode,
Yeah.
or he just goes somewhere else, something shifts
Right.
in your energy and then you don't have the orgasm. Not that the orgasm
It's
is
really true.
but that's how sensitive both men and women can be in their bodies. And this happens for men also who end up losing their erection. If you don't have that connection.
Well, and it can be about ejaculation too, or about orgasm specifically. It can be about like, oh, like something distracted me from the moment, something changed about what my partner's energy was like. And I think I think that's right. Like connection has to do with that energy that you're bringing into the partnership. That's totally, yeah, I like that answer.
I was with someone for, technically we still hang out. And it's been like 4.5 years, but we stopped having sex. We're now really good friends.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I know this work, even though like taught couples tantra
Yeah.
and how to connect and so forth and done workshops, that with her, she really works a lot. She is in her head all the time. That's where she's at. So when we would have sex, she was not there. And just in time, it became a real turnoff.
Yeah.
And it was where even when I was with her, it wasn't like she would deny me, but it was almost as if she was just waiting for me to do my thing. And for me, that's what sex is not about. I don't want to be one of those couples. And the thing is that we both were physically attracted to each other.
Sure.
We still do. I look at her and she's a very feminine, playful person, but for some reason, she's just so in her head. She's not in her body or in her heart. Mm. So it was, at first it was okay because it's new. Mm-hmm. I'm more attracted to her physical appearance and just the newness of it all. But in time, it was like, this is going nowhere. Like energetically, we're not going deeper.
Yeah.
And what was happening, she says, is there a problem? Like, I was actually not able to have an orgasm. Because I was just, it was like, what am I doing? Why, this is, because, after you get older, you know what making love is. It changes. It's not like I'm doing it for myself, like, like a cave person or like an 8-year-old, like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Friction. Yeah. Wait a minute, it's the wind. I'm excited.
Yeah, when you're young and your hormones are just like everywhere and it's the most important thing. Yeah, yep. Totally. Well, getting on that topic of how men and women are a little bit asking for different things or like how they experience sex differently. The next question being, how do men and women differ as far as asking or sharing what they desire? I think there's a very big difference there. What do you see it?
Absolutely. As you know, a lot of women can be celibate for a long time. Like sex is very ritualistic for them. And on a very primal level, even if they cannot literally, like anatomically, get pregnant, that somehow their biology will repel the village idiot. It means that it's not like they can have some random sex because they could get pregnant. This person could wander off. Like, there's still this very primal biological aspect to a woman, and making love is where they want to make sure the man will stick around, for her young, for her 15 kids. And just say if you live in tribes.
Sure.
And so there's this experience. So it's something that has to feel right for her for the most part. If it doesn't, she doesn't feel good about the experience. Whereas with men, most men, it's about the pleasure. It's about what it can do for them. Sometimes it brings closeness for men, like it does open up their hearts, and they're not aware of it. But it's not. You got to remember that men are very visually stimulated, and if we were not, again, we would not survive as a species. And meaning that that's like God's trick to say, hey, okay, someone here cannot be something here, otherwise we can't populate the planet. But when that happens, men often might be more, I guess, in that animalistic place in their bodies, and while the women are more, it's thought out, it's in their heart. And them come together, the sexual experience might be much different. So I'll give you an example, and I usually I do this at some of my workshops, and where I'll have both men and women write down the first thing to think about when it comes to sex, very quickly. And they write down 5 things. And then I ask one woman who, I want to ask the woman who sees herself as more spiritual what sex means to her. And then she usually says spiritual connection, heart opening, love making, touching, something like that. And I'll ask, okay, I want the guy who thinks of sex maybe in a more explicit or very, your own way, crude way. And he says 69, blowjob, tits. And I say, just imagine you both meeting on eHarmony.
Right.
You both have a conversation about, oh, I like sex, and he says, I like sex too. And you're both enthusiastic about this. And then you go out, have a great evening, you come home, and she goes, I'm going to go in the bathroom, and get changed and whatever. And, in his mind, he's thinking she's going to come out naked or whatever. She comes out actually with just her PJs on and wants to cuddle. He's in a room, naked with a erection, stroking himself off. And she's like, what are you doing? She says, I thought you said I like sex. She says, I do. But a different place of sex.
Totally different idea. Yeah, absolutely. A different approach.
They both said they like sex. But sex is very different for, different people.
Right. Yeah. How do you define sex in this particular context?
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's an interesting conversation too that I end up having with a lot of people, of saying in the conversation of, my partner and I just aren't having as much sex as I want to have, and then I say, well, how do you define sex? And their answers are always very interesting to me. So that's a big part of that, that equation of like, how do you define sex? What does that mean to you? What does it mean that you're not getting enough of it from your partner? And if you expanded that definition, what would that look like? So yeah. So getting into that, more into that conversation about explicitly about orgasm, you say, why is trust more important for women to achieve orgasm? So that kind of leads into that heartfelt thing, I think.
Yeah. Well, it's, again, she could get pregnant. And what's interesting is that the way that women are designed, that when they do have an orgasm or more orgasms, it draws in the sperm. So she can get pregnant. Again, remember, it doesn't matter if she's 50, 60, or 70 years old. It doesn't really matter. It's just how her body works. So it might be more difficult. It's also orgasm for women. Depends on, some women have orgasms just like men, meaning that it's clitoral and it's fast and it's just a quick getting off. Whereas other women who actually experience the deeper, longer orgasms, it's an experience of really letting go, and it takes time to cultivate that energy. And you have to really trust that man, because also in the body, if you're going to go deeper, meaning like also literally with the penis or whatever, it could hurt if you're tense. It could hurt if you're just locked up in your pelvic region. So the pelvic floor has to be open, and that has to come through her feeling okay with this, letting go. Also, women have to trust that you're going to be okay with their body. A lot of women don't feel good about their body, so a lot of that can play a part in whether or not she feels comfortable and letting go.
Yeah.
So it's just trusting that, she could be fully accepted. When she can be fully accepted, she can be vulnerable. When she can be vulnerable, she can completely slip into her femininity and let go with a partner and experience the orgasms and the love.
Yeah. Yeah, I can really see that. That's a fascinating concept of like actually the act of penetration being such a vulnerable thing.
Yes.
And I'm not sure like I'm sure obviously you think about this as a man, but do you encounter men who think about that level of vulnerability, or is that something you have to educate your clients about?
You have to educate them mostly. One of the ways that I do those, I let them know, I say, well, how about when your doctor was probing you?
Right. That makes total sense. That's a really good analogy.
What happens? They're like,
Yeah.
there's this guy, whoa.
They get that face like, oh.
Like, oh, that felt, because it doesn't necessarily, here's the truth. I mean, if you're really tight, not that I've had a lot of fingers up my butt by
Right.
doctors,
Sure.
but I learned by, trial and error, I guess, that you have to, they tell you. Plus, I have had colonics.
Oh, hey.
Yeah, so I think all men should go get colonics, by the way, if you want to kind of know the process, because usually it's a woman who's facilitating. She's like, just relax.
Yeah.
Just relax.
You're like, uh-huh.
And when you tighten up, it hurts. It's not like it necessarily, it's just the more you relax, it doesn't hurt. I cannot believe this is on this interview here.
This is great. I love it.
I'm sharing about like my anal stories.
Right.
Colonic, and maybe
This level of vulnerability. It's all
yeah.
good. Yeah. Well, I mean, this is like, really getting to know what your comfort level is with your vulnerability is something that's really important, and having counseled so many people about this, I'm sure you have a very good idea about what you're willing to share and what you're not.
Yeah, well, I remember having the colonic. That was a trip because I'm with a woman who I don't know,
Right.
and I got this thing in my butt, and I took the sheet. I'm just sitting there, and I'm just kind of like, wow.
Huh.
I remember getting a little emotional, like, whoa, this is a trip, like I'm letting this. Yeah.
That's so interesting. Well, and that is a sort of a fascinating. I mean, when you think about specifically for your gut, but definitely anything that's internal, there's that. People talk about having a gut feeling or a gut reaction. So much emotion is stored in the gut and lower pelvis, and that's something I just thought of as being really important to a woman's level of vulnerability in the sex act, because it's that very much that gut, that visceral kind of thing. And when you're like actually being like probed, or if something's going on with your gut and you've got tightness there, that's definitely going to bring up some stuff as far as like maybe muscle memory and trauma, or even if she hasn't had sexual trauma, some sort of traumatic incident that registered very deeply with her as a gut reaction is going to get brought up through that sex act that's having that deep penetration. And that makes total sense. I never thought of that before. That's really interesting.
It's great that you brought that up, because a lot of work that I do with women, and a lot of the work that my colleagues do is working on the energy in the womb, working on the energy, because again, it doesn't have to be sexual. It could be many other things of not feeling safe.
That's huge.
Not feeling love, a connection. Many things.
Yeah, God, that's huge. That just sent off all these like great, like exciting, Christmas lights in my head about like, yes, that feeling of safety and security. And that definitely goes back to what you were talking about a woman feeling safe enough to be able to be impregnated by this person that she's having a sexual interaction with.
And energetically impregnated. Is his field safe to be inside my field?
Yeah.
Have boundaries when I was younger. My parents intruded on my space. Whatever it is.
Sure. Well, and then even, going past that into a realm of like, has there been sexual violence or sexual trauma, which is a whole nother ball of wax, of course, about vulnerability and safety and security. And we hope that that hasn't happened with people, and so often it has, and it's tragic.
Hmm.
So yeah. So that's deep breath for that. It's kind of heavy stuff. But moving on into, go ahead.
It's a really great book called. Let me see here. I'm gonna
Look at your bookshelf.
for a second here.
Sure.
I happen to have it here because I have to do like a workshop. It's coming up. And it's called. I'm advertising for someone else. Is that okay?
Nice. That's great.
It's called The Wild Feminine.
Wild feminine. Yeah.
By a woman named Tammy Lynn Kent. And the book gets all into, she works with medical doctors, and she works specifically on the pelvic floor and about moving energy. Like for women who have actually had children, a lot of time where maybe they've had a couple of miscarriages, even if they were able to have a child afterwards, that that tension of trying to keep the baby there so they don't have another miscarriage, that energy is still stuck there. So she gets into a lot of sexual healing, which has nothing to do with their partner or being sexually traumatized, the way that we come to believe, but more like just through birth, just holding that tension there. So the book gets into a lot of that and actual practical exercises for women to be able to release the energy down there so they can feel more safe and comfortable.
I love that. Even for women who haven't been pregnant or had babies, that's something, because I've never birthed or been a mother, I wouldn't have thought of that. And of course that's true. And I have a lot of friends who are mothers, and I've been a doula, but it's like, it's a huge thing about, that birth trauma isn't just about the baby, it's about the mother too. Yeah.
Yes.
Brilliant. I'll have to check that out. Thank you so much for that recommendation. I'll put it on my resources page. Awesome. So just, because I kind of want to get to all your really juicy questions. Let's talk about the next one. Why does sexual polarity weaken between couples after they've been together for a long time?
So most people, when we come to think about sexual energy or sexual polarity, a lot of it has to do with maybe the physical attraction. But if a man were to lose his job, lose his direction, his focus, and he were to be at home, he would not be feeling good about himself. He wouldn't feel as masculine as he used to be. So imagine him being an energetic being, like negative and positive pole, creating that arc of energy, electricity. So he starts disconnecting from that. His wife wants to be supportive, but at the same time, he's moping around and kind of feeling sorry for himself. And unconsciously, she's thinking, well, God, how can I trust him? I need him to make the executive decisions, and he's feeling sorry for himself. And here I am working and also taking care of the kids. So here comes this kind of gender reversal where not only is she taking care of her kids, she's somewhat mothering him because she does love him. So that's going to diffuse the sexual energy right there. That would be an example. It could be where she has kids and she's more into protecting and taking care of them. By the way, women taking care of children is not a feminine thing. It's a masculine. It's masculine energy because you're in protection mode. You are ahead.
Yeah.
Your hormones are set up in more fight or flight. That is why it's very hard for women to unwind when, say, if it were a housewife, her man come home and her go, okay, I'm ready. For you.
Yeah.
It's not going to work that way.
No.
So we have to really pay attention to the roles, the personas that we wear, and because that is not who we are. It's connecting back to our essence, our playfulness. I'll give you an example. I've worked with couples where they work a lot. They both are working a lot, and everything's about kind of a more matter-of-fact conversation about their kids, and maybe they're thriving in some ways from meaning that they're making money, they're able to travel, but the couple is not in their hearts. Therefore, they're not having sex anymore. And so there's this ridiculous, things I recommend, such as getting completely naked and throwing ping pong balls at each other. You know what I mean?
That's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like just to get playful. It's skinny dipping. It doesn't mean it has to lead to sex. It's just that you have to get back to that childlike behavior. Because think about this for a moment, how energetic children are.
Yeah.
And children have a lot of sexual energy. Not the energy I'm talking about where they're thinking about having sex. That energy they have is connected to their sexual energy.
Yeah, that's really
Don't
true.
get caught up in our work and daily functions.
Hmm.
We disconnect from that.
Hmm.
That same energy is also the same energy that's connected to our creativity. That is why
Oh,
often
yeah.
people we think should look a lot older or
Yeah.
not function like the Rolling Stones um, still have a lot of energy because
Hmm.
they're connected to their sexual energy. And I'm not talking about their genitals. I'm talking about that same youthful energy. A lot of artists remain looking young.
Hmm.
People connected to their creativity have a tendency to look a lot younger because they're connected to that youthfulness. That youthfulness has to be always there between a couple. My parents have been together for over 50 years. They have that. They don't have genital sex. My dad is 89, my mom is 80,
Hmm.
but they have that youthfulness. They're very playful. There's a sexual polarity, and you can see it. And my dad has not lived the healthiest lifestyle at all. But because he looks forward to and playing with my mom, the communication, because they're learning new things, that energy is
Wow.
keeping them alive.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Can you describe a little bit more what you mean by sexual polarity?
Okay. Well, how about this? Have you ever been with a man and just, even though he's physically attractive or whatever it is, he should be attractive, you just don't feel sexual towards him?
Yeah.
And have you been around a man for one moment, maybe in a situation where he's being very directive and
Hmm.
kind of guiding you in some way and helping you, and there's that moment you're like, oh my God, I'm kind of being attracted to this man this moment.
I'm a partner dancer, so that happens to me frequently.
Okay, that's what I'm talking about. It's
Hmm.
you know, it's energies come together to create this arc of energy.
Yeah.
It's like electricity, and if you have two feminine people, you're not going to have that arc of energy. If you have two
True.
masculine people, you're not going to have the arc of energy. The
Yeah.
energies will repel each other. It
Hmm.
doesn't mean that a man has to be masculine and a woman has to be feminine. It has to be that when you are together and making love or other circumstances, that there has to be a flow.
Hmm.
And where you maybe see the power struggles or the fights, it might be where you both are too feminine or too masculine. Such
That
as
makes total
about
sense.
finances. You know, she's saying you should do like this, blah blah blah. She's in her head.
Hmm.
I think about this. He's like, well, I think we should do. And they're both in
Yeah.
their head, both in their masculine. Someone
Yeah.
has to drop into their heart.
Hmm.
So that'd be example. Or it could be where, what do you want to do tonight? I don't know. I don't care. What do you want to do tonight? I
More
don't know.
directive. Yeah.
And they're all of a sudden you like have two people who are just completely passive. Nothing's
Right.
happening, and
Right.
there's no arc of energy.
Sure. Well, and then there's, we talk about like passive energy as being more feminine, and there's passive energy, and then there's non-passive energy, and they can be both masculine or feminine, but I do agree with you, like the role of the feminine energy in the relationship is often to follow, whereas the role of the masculine energy is often to lead. And as a partner dancer, of course, I see that very specifically, but I both lead and follow as a woman, and we encompass that energy. I encompass that more masculine energy when I'm leading and a more feminine energy when I'm following. So I completely agree with that.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that's the same thing in communication.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I know I guess the big part of the summit is to talk about pillow talk.
Right.
Pillow talk is happening all the time,
Hmm.
like this.
Yeah.
If a couple is not dancing like the way you just mentioned, it doesn't matter because it's like that the 8, 10, 12 hours that happens before you enter the bedroom
Hmm.
matters a lot.
That's really true. Yeah. I think people don't think about that interaction that they have just throughout their day, even if it's not as a sexual interaction, but as a partner interaction.
Hmm.
That connection that they have and how that energy is flowing back and forth between them has everything to do with what happens when they get to that point where they actually are taking their clothes off or going into the bedroom to even just go to sleep.
Hmm.
For sure. Wow, that's great. Yeah. This is good. This is just such good stuff. I love it.
Cool.
So the last question I have for you is, how does past sexual trauma or bad experience influence a couple's capacity to make great love? Not just to make love, but to make great love.
Well, it kind of goes back to what I mentioned about a woman having blocks in her
Mm.
body.
Hmm.
There are women out there who I've worked with a lot of them who've been raped, and So if they've gotten over it, like meaning that they're now able to have sex, there's also a part of them that they feel maybe they've given away, like it was taken from them, from a perpetrator or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So they're still holding back. So if they've not done deeper work there, that can show up in the lovemaking. If a man were caught masturbating and shunned, or it could be just where his parents just didn't talk about it, he could see that as a negative thing. That can also show up where he ejaculates too quickly, meaning that a lot of men who actually ejaculate too quickly, it's because it's how we learn. It's like we're doing it in corners so you don't get caught.
Right.
Think about repetition. It's going to create this habit. Secondly, it was also very important for women to get pregnant quickly, because if there were a storm coming, meaning if we're in tribes, we had to make sure we got the job done.
Right.
So there's an anthropological aspect to it also. So the thing is that we have to rise above that. And so think about all the mixed messages that we have in our culture today. And this is something that's not really brought up, because you might think with Facebook and by all that we see as far as pictures, like visually for women, to how men are, we're really confused as far as what women want. Okay? So think about that confusion, meaning that we're seeing women being very provocative. I mean, young women on Facebook everywhere.
Very sexualized.
Exactly. And then it comes that time to be with this woman, and then we're being rejected. That sexual confusion is in our body. And then for women, they're feeling, why is this happening? You know, I just dress like a slut, or but I'm not. Well,
right.
The reality is that there's a lot of mixed messages with this. So we don't really have much of a model. Our culture, I don't know what's going to happen to, the teenagers, kids in their 20s. Like, I noticed that this sexual polarity is really not there. I don't know who are the men or the women. I see that a lot of feminine men or a lot of masculine women, or it's just they're more like, they seem like buddies. There's not this kind of polarity, and I don't see any romance. I don't see the art of sexuality. I don't see the art of love. I see kind of more high five. In fact, I play in a band.
Wow.
I play in a band, and this is great. And so I play in the 80s tribute band, so we get hired to play at receptions once in a while. Sure. And in fact, we did this last Saturday. And this other wedding I went to, it was like a year ago, I remember them doing the vows, and the girlfriend, had tattoos. She's kind of cool looking, very hip, and so is he. And they're saying their vows, and they high five, I'm like, I wonder how long that's going to last, because if there's no sexual polarity, he's going to either wander, she's going to get bored, whatever it is. It's changed I don't mean to bring, and this conversation.
No, it's fascinating.
It's just that there's a lot of confusion with our sexuality these days. So
I really agree.
So every day people are being exposed to this. So I guess my take-home message with this one is this, outside of being literally sexually traumatized, is everyone has to take ownership of their body and what sexuality means to them. You have to look at your body as a temple. And it might be literally where a woman or man is looking at the mirror and looking through their eyes, and many of us have done this, where you can see something else looking at you. That's that part of you, your spiritual self.
Right.
Bring light to every part of your body and take ownership of how you want to operate on this planet with this body. Harness it, love it, embrace it, and only accept a partner who respects himself the same way and respects your body the same way.
Yeah.
And that definitely shifts things. We don't have to worry so much at what's going on outside of us and what we see on Facebook or social media. Is that we have to formulate an idea that's healing and works for us. It doesn't matter what other people are doing, because it's not working for most people. Because these concepts and this misinterpretation of sexuality.
That's brilliant. That's a brilliant tool. I really love that idea of just standing with yourself and just looking at yourself and saying, you know what, this is my body, this is what I live in, it's what I've got, it's the one I was given, and I am going to love it because it is what is. I love that. That's a great idea. And it's a lot of my experts so far have said, like, oh, it's so important to connect with yourself before you're trying to tell your partner how to connect with you. And that's a great tool for that self-connection piece of like, I can accept me. How is my partner going to accept me if I can't?
Yeah,
It's
it's like
huge.
it's something I recommend for women mostly because they're the ones who've been sexually traumatized. I mean, men also, but I mostly meet women. And that is where I want them to truly connect to their senses. And both men and women, I feel, should do this. It might be where they take a warm bath so that they're feeling the warmth of the water on their body. They have incense or a candle going on where they smell that. They have music so they're able to hear it. They might be eating a piece of chocolate or something so they're able to taste something. Where they fully connect to just being a sexual, alive being with their senses being totally open. And if that moves into masturbating, it's not masturbating for the sake of getting off.
Right.
It's to connect to the fact that you can feel your fingers, that you can feel the how sensitive you are. Because what people don't realize, especially men, most men, when they jack off, it's like they can rip out a tree. I mean, they become desensitized. Seriously,
Yeah.
they really do. Like
Yeah.
their penis becomes callous. Not only because it literally is that they've got calloused hands. I mean, men,
Right.
their hands can be, and it's just so. What they don't realize that a lot of men it's difficult for them to keep an erection inside a woman's vagina. There's many factors, but
Too
here's one that
soft.
most is not brought up, and that is
Yeah.
if you have been jacking off really hard, there's no vagina is going to be tight enough or
No.
good enough or create the playground for you to stay erect.
Right. Because it's not going to be what you're used to, this like calloused, hard surfaced palm.
It's quick.
You know?
It's
Totally
and it's
different.
and you're only doing it for 3 to 5 minutes. How can you
Right.
last longer with your partner?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that the only way for it to work for men, I'm going off another tangent here.
No, I love it. It's great.
Okay, is that they have to learn to bring the sensitivity back into the penis. That would be masturbating less. That would be when they do it, they don't necessarily try to ejaculate, where they just achieve an erection and just take a deep breath into that. Imagine how that worked with a partner, where they don't ejaculate right away. They're able to maintain it. They're able to experience it. Secondly, it develops more sensitivity, so the woman's vagina actually feels a lot better. There's so many levels we can take.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. No,
And
I love that. I'm really loving that feedback.
It's also the emotional connection too, is that when he starts feeling the love and he starts feeling that polarity, the energy transcends into the body. And I'll tell you this, because I've had this experiences by default. Like, for example, I remember being younger and just seeing a hot girl, or I'm thinking about having sex, and I'm like, I have an erection. I'm like, oh my God, I could chop wood with this.
Yeah.
And then I've had experiences where I have a hot woman, she's in lingerie, we're mature adults, and nothing's happening because it's mechanical, I'm in my head, and maybe I'm intimidated in a moment, or it's not the sexual polarity.
Yeah.
So, and the sexual polarity has to be there. There has to be this invitation. A woman, at least for me, because I'm masculine, cannot be more masculine than I am in the bedroom. I mean, she
Right.
can be the one in charge. Just somehow for me, it works when I'm that way.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
and I have been with women where I have felt like just looking at them in their eyes and connecting to that and connecting to the breath, I'm like, oh my God, it has very little to do with sex, and also not an erection.
Yeah.
So connection is so important for that to happen, and also bringing sensitivity back into our bodies, bringing that healing light, and literally staying away from men is, being more gentle with equipment. And for women, also being able to touch yourself because you want to. It's about you. You're exploring yourself. Think of your genitals no differently than your tongue. It is an organ. There's no reason. It's not a negative thing. It's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, so that stigmatization of genitals being like, don't touch there, don't go there, we get so, especially in Western culture, we get so cut off from that space of like, oh, this is only used for sexuality. So if you're doing anything else with it, that's wrong.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then just allowing, I love that idea about just allowing that part of your body to be like your earlobe or, your thigh, like these are all areas that we can experience sensuality. And I like that idea of like just, have a sensual experience, take a bath, have some incense, have some music, eat some chocolate, drink some wine, whatever it is. Experience all of those senses as a part of your sexual being and not necessarily having to genitalize that sexuality. I love that. That's a brilliant tool. Thank you.
I mean, we can bring up the Bible, but I'm not going to. Which is a topic, but I will share some light on that.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
you do.
you got to keep in mind that, and most people watching this, I imagine, are going to be progressive, and if not a big deal, then I trigger them. That's okay. But I know if they're watching this, they're curious, and that is, or listening to however form they get this, and that is, there's been so many the Bible has been translated so many times. There are a lot of words that did not exist, for back then. Okay, that's one thing we all agree with. And secondly, we have to look at the culture as far as like what was happening during that time, and how did you control the people? How did you control population? How did you instill fear in people to control them? And religion was the government. Religion was pretty much the government. And we didn't have social media then. We didn't have ways to read about another way. We weren't influenced by other things. That is why also by 367 AD that they destroyed all the other sects. There was over 200 sects of Christian teachings, and anything else but the Orthodox view was considered heresy.
Wow.
So it was very open-minded. What people don't realize that. So what we've come to read is kind of after everything was destroyed.
Very narrow, very limited.
Exactly. And so we have a misinterpretation of things, and you have to just see why that was so not. It wasn't bad or good. I'm just saying you have to be aware of why that was important during that time for maybe other cultures not come together, especially the Jews.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Not to want to be with other cultures or whatever, or not have sex without it being about procreation.
Right.
Okay?
Right. Yeah, that population control aspect, that's something that I don't think of. But at the time, it was very important that, all these people coming together in this one space, and in order to maintain levels of quality of life, you couldn't have this population explosion. That makes total sense. That's a whole rabbit trail we could get into in another interview.
Or more that they wanted to have, the Jews were being killed off, so they wanted, meaning that they want to make sure you're having sex with your own kind.
Right, so that they can still maintain their culture.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So that leads into, like, I want to go into that one. That'll be a whole...
It's true, yeah. We could talk about religion and its ramifications and sexuality for like 6 more interviews. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm not putting anything against it. It's just, I think most people, if you really want to look at it, you don't put it down as bad or good. You just look at why it was important then.
Yes. And how things have changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Slavery was very important back then.
Yeah. True.
It's why even, God, like, why even here it became very important to farmers here. They wanted to maintain their crops. They wanted to take care of their families. I'm unsure they were thinking about whether or not it was bad or good, but more like, I'm trying to take care of my family. I'm not for slavery, by the way.
Right.
But you have to look at the times of where their mindset was. I think anyone who has issues with sexuality based on religion, what they were taught, go deeper and investigate that with an open mind and curiosity, like, oh, okay. Because if you have those ancestral roots, I mean, it's been passed on to, your great-great-great-grandmother and so forth, you, why carry that? You know?
And why carry it over onto if you have children and passing it along to them? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that family of origin work stuff is really, really fascinating too.
Yes.
Totally. Yeah. Ray, thank you so much for being with us today.
Sure.
I just want to have just a brief minute of opportunity. Are you offering a free gift to our viewers and listeners today?
Yes, I have. I didn't talk about this.
I know. It's okay.
We're thinking to pop up with a URL.
Not in the video itself, but we will have links on the email that I send out that has led them to this.
Okay, great. I do have a ebook called
Great.
It's a chapter out of my book called The 8 Feminine Archetypes.
Ooh, nice.
And it actually gets into different aspects of feminine energy in a lot of what we were talking about. It's great read for both men and women to create the sexual polarity.
Nice.
Really
I love
great.
that. Thank you so much. And I was really just such rich material came out of this. I'm so glad to have had you on today.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.